Hello everyone. Today I'm going to share with you a story of the first ever Dungeons and Dragons one shot that I ever ran. Spoilers, of course, if you are intending to play this, or if you know that your dungeon master or game master is going to run this with you, then perhaps tune out just now. But if you're not a D&D fan, a D&D person, then why not? I kid. But if you're not, it's probably still something of an interesting story. Anyway, if you follow me over on Twitter, you'll know that I play D&D, and if anyone ever asks me or not me, but I think Jiwi recently, maybe not recently, asked, oh, my computer's being rather loud. She recently asked for input on a good easy one shot to run, and I recommended her this one, which you will see in the title of the video, but it is The Wolves of Welton, Winghorn Brass. So I'll give you the little blurb, I guess, from Winghorn Press's official site. I was going to say original. That too. So, a single session adventure for parties of 2nd to 3rd level. It has been a long time since the people of Welton have worried about anything but sheep ticks and late frost. But now a pack of strangely determined wolves are spiriting away entire flocks at a time and driving farmers from their fields. With food running low and their sorcerer in residence nowhere to be found, the village council sent out a desperate plea for brave adventurers to destroy the beasts. Is the job as easy as a walk in the woods, or is there more to the wolves of Welton than mere animal cunning? There's only one way to find out. And it gives you a nice PDF download. We have our adventure hooks. So there are 2 main ways to turn the party towards Welton. And I'll tell you, of course, of my experience with my party as we go through. But the adventure hooks is just sort of, how do the people that you're running the game for, how do they come across this? So there are 2 main ways to turn the party towards Welton. The first of these is to simply have the village feature as a stop on the road to the next major adventure. The other is to make the party aware of the village's call for help through an adventurers guild, NPC ally, or other local information source. If using the latter option, let it be known that the Welton Village Council is offering an 800 gold pieces reward to anyone who can wipe out a pack of wolves. Any NPC will note that this is an extremely generous reward considering its apparent difficulty. Whether they view this as tempting or suspicious will depend on their disposition. So, for background on myself and my friends' experience, I'd played previous to this 2 games with an experienced player. She taught me and my friend group how to play, and she was wonderful. With us, she played The Wild Sheep Chase, which is also by Winghorn Brass. I almost forgot already. Yeah, she ran that one with us. And then another one that I don't know the name of, but that was amazing. Yeah, that was really good. And in those 2 games, I played a rogue, a half-elf rogue, who I just love. Still my favorite character to play. This was about 13 months ago, I think we played last. Or we first played, I think it was August of 2022. So, depends when I process upload this video. But at this point in time, that was 13 months ago. I've been thinking about making this video audio, I guess, since then. So yes, she introduced us all how to play, and then she wasn't able to play with us anymore because she was just visiting, and we played. I thought, I could give this a go. I really enjoyed the role playing part of it, and I started watching Critical Role by then. So I felt I had a better understanding of the rules and how to play, and I enjoy doing accents, and I enjoy writing, so it felt sort of natural for me to take the DM's head or screen, I guess. So yeah, that was me and my party for this journey. I had 4 players, 4-player characters. I had a high elf paladin, a half-orc barbarian, a tiefling cleric, and a human rogue. Yeah, I think he was a rogue. I have one person in the group who just always changes what he is, because we're playing one shot, so why not try everything? Although he's always been a human. You get extra +1 to all of your stats, so why not? So anyway, as I said before, I think, I was really over preparing, so I wrote my own little note sheet alongside it. So the adventure on the website is 14 pages, but my note sheet is 17 pages. Okay, so I'm going to read what I have written sort of alongside, which is how I did it at the game. So, after your party defeated Noak, the insane wizard, to help shine bright the high wizard, you're all feeling pretty good. So, I was sort of alluding to my party's last adventure. However, only one of the characters, the paladin, was present in both adventures. So the paladin who scored the killing blow on both Noak and his bed, which he transformed into a wormling, was feeling very good. One who didn't quite so well was Cleftus, who's my character. It means a thief in Greek, so I like it. It's also where like kleptomaniac came from, I think. Yeah, so my character didn't do so well. She fell unconscious 3 times. Because, yeah, I was just, squishy rogues, really. I forgot to say that this adventure is for 2nd to 3rd level, but for the adventure we'd just been on, we were 5th level, so I didn't want to de-level the characters, so I made the adventure harder, but I made it too hard, and we'll get to that later. So, we have me clicking between windows. So, a few days after your big victory, the 3 of you are in the tavern when Cleftus suddenly appears at your table smiling. You are all going to be very interested in what I have heard today, she says. There is a village not too far east from here called Welton, and they are in need of some help. They have a wolf problem. They are offering 300 gold to anyone If you can wipe out a pack of wolves, that's 100 gold for each of you. I wonder why I changed that. Because in the original adventure it says 800. Oops. I won't be going with you. I'm going off on my own adventure, she smirks. Head to the east, the town of Welton. Seek out the council. She says nothing more. She just... And then I rolled for stealth, hoping to, do a spectacular disappearing thing like rogues like to do. And I rolled a natural one. So as I was getting up from the table, or at least my player character, fell flat on her face and then rubbed her face and then, trying to play it off, walked out the door. And so, yes, I leave my paladin and the other two characters that were previously with her, which I think is human fighter and elfin druid. They both left. And then the tiefling. So the human fighter was replaced by a human rogue, and then the elf druid was replaced by the barbarian, and then the person that we played with for the first time, she joined as the tiefling cleric. So they all introduce themselves to each other at the tavern and decide to go to Welton. So, my notes. The four of you are travelling through the hills to the west of the village, whose neat white-walled buildings stand out among the green grass in the valley below. Around 150 feet ahead of you is a slight bend in the road, where it passes between an outcrop of rocks and the borders of a mossy woodland. As you approach, you see a pair of men driving a small flock of sheep through the gap with the help of 4 sheepdogs. Now, I had a map for this. I love adventures with maps. Suddenly, the dogs prick up their ears and start frantically barking, but not at you. The men immediately pull long wooden clubs from their belts and start looking around, clearly distressed. In the blink of an eye, lean grey shapes burst out from both sides of the road, all launching themselves at the sheep with incredible speed. There are 8 in total. And here I gave my party an opportunity to join the farmers and fight, and they all did. They immediately ran in. Whether it's because they wanted to help or whether because they wanted to fight, because my party my group are very like, yes, let's battle kind of thing. So they rolled for initiative. I don't have my notes that I wrote, but they managed to defeat the wolves. So when you approach to help, you notice that 4 of the wolves are by the shepherds, growling and snarling, gnashing at the shepherds. The other 4 wolves try to pick off the sheep. If the elves try to talk to the wolves will just snarl at them. The elves. Okay. The party, I guess. The wolves will just snarl at them and continue. So I mentioned earlier that I made things harder for the party. So I thought leveling wolves to direwolves would be appropriate. Whereas I know now that it would have been better just adding a couple more wolves to the encounters. But they were fine during this one. It says in the guidance, after 1 death, or 2 deaths, or 2 turns, the remaining wolves will exchange a look and quickly retreat into the woods as if they knew that they were outmatched. And so, with the wolves gone, the shepherds turn to you, grateful for your help. Thank you so much. Can you accompany us to Welton? I'm afraid we don't have any gold to offer you, but they look at you, a tiefling, a half-orc, a high-elf, and a human. Then appraise your weapons and armor. Are you here because you heard about the wolves? They look at each other gleefully before they immediately start chatting. And now this is where I info-dumped all of the information from the sheet onto them. Now, I shouldn't have info dumped. I should have let there be natural conversation, but this is something that I've learned since, I'm playing some more, watching some more. So they sort of exchange information, and now I suppose I could sort of give you a little bit. I don't want to give you everything. But this all started when that sorcerer Father Medicson's brother Upton disappeared. Now, what I had intended to do, because I love doing accents, is I intended to give everyone a Yorkshire accent, because it was like, sheep farmers, oh, we're in Yorkshire. Oh, this all started when that sorcerer Father Medicson's brother Upton disappeared. But I went Irish instead. So this all started when that sorcerer Father Medicson's brother Upton disappeared. First sign of something out of the usual was going on came when the Petersons up on the hill had a dozen sheep snatched from inside a barn. Anyway, important note from here is that people tried to hunt the wolves, but there was thunder, there was fire, and then a halfling named Featherrock. So whenever anyone names a character you got to write it down. Yeah, a halfling named Featherrock, a shepherd, was hurt real badly in the fight. All the others thought he was dead, but next morning he's found dumped on the Westley's doorstep near the woods. So, poor man ain't been the same since, tells wild tales of voices in the night. Most folks round here say he's cracked in the head. So, the shepherds tell you that they need to go and point you in the direction of the council meeting, which will be taking place at the inn called the Shepherd's Crook. And so I sort of go into the description of the town, and then I call for a history check, and I'll tell them sort of a bit more information about it. Then a perception check just sort of shows that the children are hungry and things obviously are not right. So they enter the Shepherd's Crook, the tavern, because every D&D game has to have a tavern. And so there's a dwarven woman behind the bar, and that was someone that my party really liked, which was surprising. I thought she was kind of plain. Anyway, she is a dwarven woman, and her name is Lenore Slatebeard. And then she's quite forthcoming, I shall say. She's, my note here says, if they tell Lenore that they're adventurers or that they're in the town to help with a wolf problem, the party will say, did you hear, or she will say, did you hear that? These folks here are going to help us with our wolf problem. And the folk in the inn let out a cheer, except for the shepherds, who remain dour and even look cynical. And then she says, the three of you should go to the council meeting straight away. And she leads them back to behind the bar, room behind the bar, where they're all having a council meeting. So this is where they fell in love with a character that I really didn't expect. But that's a party for you. The important, they say in D&D, the important characters are the ones that the party likes. So yeah. So we have, when they enter, there are 8 chairs around the table, 5 human men, 1 human woman, and 2 halflings, a male and a female. You appear to have entered in the middle of an argument. The male halfling, Tillis Marion, is yelling at the human man dressed in priestly robes, Father Merrickson. They were arguing. And anyway, so once they spot that the adventurers have entered, they turn, of course, to look at the interruption. And they sort of give more information to the party, and the priest is more straight shooting, but yeah, we've got more sort of info dump on here, and the priest tells them everything. They organised a posse of men to hunt down the wolves. The village's protector, my brother, went missing around the same time when the attacks began. That's why we were searching for someone to help. And then, yeah, the little halfling that was arguing with them was quite indignant and very, very aggressive and things. And then they have a shepherd who stands up, and he's sort of someone that they all look at with respect. And this is the person I expected them to like. And if the party had asked him, he would have gone with them, but they didn't ask, so he didn't offer. He might have if I'd thought about it at the time, but you know. So anyway, they speak about Featherrock, the halfling, I think, who was injured, and they said, oh, he's not been right in the head. He's talking about wild tales of voices in the night. Is he a halfling? Yes, a halfling named Featherrock, decent shepherd. So they go to his room, and sort of questioned him for a bit. Oh, this was unexpected. They were trying to get answers, of course, because you're going into a situation where you're fighting wolves, and you don't really know what's happening. You're going to try and get as much information from the source as you can. My party were very aggressive in their questioning, because this poor halfling is just lying in bed. He's bandaged, he's pale, he's, soaked in his own sweat. He sort of says, I'll tell you the story if you promise that you believe me, because obviously those other people have said he's cracked in the head. They think that he's, making things up. And so they ask and they ask, and they keep asking, and there's a point in the PDF where it says he'll start crying because he's reminded of everything that happens. So he starts crying, but my party keep asking him, and he's like, I had him sort of being like crying, like, I don't know, stop it, leave me alone. They're like still trying to get answers out of him, and I was just like, he's just crying at you guys. Maybe you should go. So they start off into the woods to try and find these wolves. So they are, I think I had them roll survival, and they were walking through the woods, and then they come across another battle encounter, and this was hilarious, and my paladin still gets teased even by me about this. So the encounter, if you're familiar with the adventure, they encounter an owlbear, and the owlbear is thin and limping and bleeding, and it charges the party. And so my paladin, of course, I don't know if owlbears actually speak common now that I think about it. I might give that a quick look up right now, just because I'm very curious. But the owlbear charges and immediately goes for the person who's the weakest, which was my the owlbear does not speak. In my game, the owlbear spoke common. My paladin was asking the owlbear. Oh, it charged the cleric, because the cleric had the lowest AC, and I think the lowest hit points too. Anyway, the paladin asked if the owlbear was okay, if it needed healing. Again, if I thought about it now, I would ask. Like, I would get them to roll for intelligence to sort of see if they knew if owlbears were, good creatures, evil creatures, neutral creatures. But she said to the owlbear, okay, if I heal you, will you leave me alone? Like, will you leave my party alone? And I rolled for deception and she rolled for insight. And I rolled a natural 20 on deception, which beats everything. She rolled like an 18 or something, and she was like, oh, okay. So the reason that my paladin was able to talk to the owlbear is because she actually had the spell Speak with Animals. So she was able to talk to the owlbear because of that. And that's why she was able to ask, oh, if we heal you, will you hurt us? And he was like, no, natural 20. So that's how she was able to speak to the owlbear. Completely forgot. Okay, so she healed the owlbear, and then the owlbear continued to attack the cleric, knocked the cleric unconscious, and then went for other members of the party, but not the paladin. And everyone's like, what did you do that for? And the paladin's like, I'm just a good guy. I just want to help people. So my poor paladin. But we got the tiefling cleric healed all up, and everything was okay. In the end, the owlbear was defeated. They got a couple of feathers as a souvenir. And yeah, that's what they found. And so next we had another map, the next part, and they're on the edge of the forest, and there's this cave, and the party stop before the edge of the forest, and they can see these wolves all sort of like milling around. Some are at the fire, some appear to be mending a fence, and some are eating a sheep carcass. Many of the wolves appear to be wearing strips of brightly coloured cloth or other decorations tied about limbs or their necks. Regarding the owlbear, I did tell the paladin that I rolled a nat 20 deception against her. And she was like, see guys, I couldn't have done anything. How was I supposed to know? So the scene seems peaceful and organized for a wolf's den. And then they go past the edge of the tree line, which sets off some traps. And the wolves howled in common, hunters. And then we had to, they fought. This was sort of the boss battle, actually. We had regular wolves, except I made it dire wolves and then almost killed my party. And then after the first round, 6 more wolves appear, which is 2 in front, one whose eyes and skin pulse with a crackling blue light, the other with eyes that glow with a constant orange flame and red lines streaking across her body like her skin is cracked rock sitting on top of a burning pool of magma. The 4 that follow have scraps of crude armor, leather armor tied around their bodies. So the pair at the front start talking to their wolves in the common tongue. The one with the red eyes yells at the wolves to kill the hunters. The one with the blue eyes tells them, protect the pack, don't let them harm the pups. So then they take on all of the wolves. And then Bolt, the blue wolf, howls that this fight is not helping anyone when we get to a certain trigger point in the battle. And so We have, yeah, I can't remember what exactly transpired because I think I made notes, but not much. I'm sort of I'll play the game and then I get too involved to make the notes. But I think they gave him the explanation of how they can talk and how Bolt can have lightning, and flame has a fiery breath. So the pack became intelligent after attacking a sorcerer named Alexei Merkson who was trespassing on her territory. During our battle, there was a flash of bright light that knocked us all out. When we awoke, we tried to rouse the Lightbringer, but he was dead. And good riddance, growls Flame. Humans are nothing but trouble. After that, we found that our minds worked much better than before we could speak the common tongue. Our memories were filled with strange images and information that we didn't have before. Now, this whole time, my party thought that the thing that was controlling these wolves was the sorcerer. And so they were like, oh, he died. So it's really interesting to find out sort of, they had one thought about it. And I always find that about D&D, your party will always surprise you, sometimes in good ways, sometimes in really, 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 really annoying ways. So they still kind of didn't believe the wolves at this point. They were like, really? No, he's behind this, And they say that it's the Bolt, it's the lightning one that talks the whole time. He says we've been using our newfound abilities to make life better for our pack. Pups won't risk starvation in the winter thanks to our flock of sheep. Our home is nicer than it ever was. And then Flame says, you're here in our home. We have the right to kill you for trespassing. And then it seems like they're sort of, my party was saying, okay, well, if you stop stealing all of their sheep, then you guys can stay here. But please don't steal any more sheep. Give us half of them back so that they can replenish their flock. And then, I get them to roll persuasion checks. And Bolt is like, okay. And then Flame turns on Bolt and clamps her jaws around his neck and attacks him. And then the rest of the wolves attack my party again. And almost get a TPK. All of them, apart from the rogue, fell unconscious because I made them far too overpowered. I should have just kept everything the way it was, but I gave them the hit points and the AC of a direwolf. So, whoopsie. But, only the rogue was left standing, and then he pointed on the map, found a bush to hide in, rolled pretty high on stealth against the perception of the wolves, even though they watched him disappear. I was like, oh crap, I don't want to DPK these guys. So he went and hid, and then the other wolves retreated back into the cave, and then we were able to rescue the rest of the party, drag them away unconscious. And after that, sort of had them go back to town, heal up, try again the next day. They didn't talk to anyone. They just went back, healed up, and then, which I always found it very strange at the start, and still find it weird to think about when I actively think about it, that you can go home and sleep off near death and then be at full hit points the next day. But there you go. So they went back. They fought the wolves, defeated the wolves. A few of the wolves actually, after the party were basically dead, a few of the wolves actually sided with Bolt and went to check that he was okay, and I had a couple of rounds where the wolves were sort of trying to pick each other off, but only like the good wolves really died. I don't think any of the bad ones did, which wasn't great, but it meant less wolves for my party to fight, and they managed to defeat them the next day, and they were okay. And then inside the cave there were 3, just look at the pictures actually, 3 rooms. The central chamber is the pack's main living and sleeping area. There are piles of bones in the southeastern corner, and the floor is dotted with large piles of leaves and cloth that appear to be very rudimentary beds. Crude depictions of hunting wolves drawn upon the wall. And then if they inspected it, which I don't think they did. Or did they? No, they did. And then the player can notice that a series of images appear to depict the pack's fight with a human who shares gifts with the wolves before disappearing. And they definitely checked this, actually. And I think this was when they were like, maybe the sorcerer isn't behind this after all. So the western subchamber functions as a storeroom for both goods and many of the stolen sheep. Bags containing thick leather and homespun wool are kept here, while other interesting items picked up by wolves during their raids are piled up against the wall. Further inside, the wolves have constructed a crude but effective fence out of what appears to be fallen branches, some of which shaped by tools. The noise of bleating is constant and very loud. And the central subchamber acts as a nursery for the pack's young pups. So we have I think a couple of the knives and things were taken from the storeroom. They, I think, let half of the sheep go. They spoke with Bolt, who wasn't unconscious, or who was unconscious, but who wasn't dead. He had hidden outside of the cave and rested and waited for the party to come back the next day. And they went into the wolf. They went in to see the wolf pups, and there were 2 wolves guarding it, but they said they would leave it be because they're not that evil. And then the eastern chamber contains a burning fire, otherwise it's empty, with a hole in the ceiling. And then they went back to the town, sharing the news that they had made a deal with the wolves. They had defeated the evil wolf, and they had driven them out of town. And so the party are really happy to hear about the wolves, and that they've been, dealt with, essentially. And then they tell Father Merrickson about his brother, who was the sorcerer that gave the wolves their power. And they say that they'll show him the picture on the wall, and they say that he can talk with the wolves, that it's safe to talk with the wolves. So they persuade him. But Tillis, the little angry Irish little angry halfling, he's annoyed. He's like, why should I believe them? They've been stealing from us for weeks, making our lives miserable. How do they know we won't continue to do this as soon as you leave? And then he, my half-orc barbarian, managed to persuade Tillis to go with them, and in that 20'd, so got Tillis to even ride on her shoulders. And he's like, oh, oh, I don't like this very much, but secretly he's like, wee. And they just were just absolutely enraptured by him. And I just was like, really? My grumpy little halfling who's like, you know, basically contrary. Everything that they say, he's like, no, but this. And they loved him. Also, my tiefling cleric, which is a strange combination because tieflings are often seen by gods as, well, not Jester, she's a tiefling cleric. We love Jester here. By we, I mean me. I love Jester. She's my favorite. From the Mighty Nine. Her and Caleb and Not, and then sidetrack. Grog and Pike from season 1. I haven't seen season 3. Anyway, campaign 3. Campaign 2. Campaign 2 is the best though. Anyway. Yes, my tiefling cleric, she was flirting. She was like, "Oh, how old is what is this? Father Merrickson, Daddy Marcus is what she ended up calling him." And she's like, "I like older men, Daddy Marcus, blah blah blah." And I'm just like, "Oh gosh." So she's flirting with him, and I completely forgot that tieflings are seen as by religious people and like frowned upon because they're part devil kind of thing with the horns or something. I don't know if it's truly that they're part like demon or devil, but at least the church sees it that way. So she's flirting heavily with him, and it's only much later that I realize, wow, he would be actually like afraid of her. But he's trying to be like, oh, yes, well, that's right, and really like, oh, yes, the, trying to let her down gently, being a man of the cloth. So they go to they go to check out the caves and things. They're introduced, Daddy Marcus and the grumpy little halfling are introduced to Bolt, who is leading the rest of the wolves. The sheep had followed the party, half of the sheep had followed the party back to town, and so the shepherds were happy. But yeah, Bolt was introduced to Father Merrickson, and the grumpy halfling was enjoying his ride on the barbarian shoulders. And yeah, Father Merrickson got a little bit of closure. And then when the party returned to town, they got their money. But that was kind of it. He gave the council gave the party some warm clothing, because I'd kind of thought that I would run Frozen Sick from D&D Beyond. I think it's only on D&D Beyond. Anyway, I was gonna run that with them, and I was like, oh, they'll need to wear warm clothing, otherwise they'll get a point of exhaustion. And if they listen, and I have them listen to this, and I know one of them is subscribed to my channel, so you didn't hear this. No, I think I already told her. That would be my paladin, my owlbear loving paladin. Yeah, so I was gonna do Frozen Sick, but I haven't actually run that with them. But yes, I think there were certain, and that was sort of how it ended. They got their money, they got the clothing as a reward. But obviously, as in D&D, there could have been many different ways. They could have killed just all the wolves. They could have decided not to do it at all. They could have died, which was my mistake. didn't know anything about challenge ratings or anything like that anyway. They could have lied and said that they had defeated all the wolves or something, but Father Merrickson, who has pretty high insight, he would have caught them lying and would have been anyway. I didn't write something, but if they'd lied, he probably would have caught it because he did have +5 to his insight, but it would have depended how well I rolled because, I rolled a natural 1 on my stealth after I told, Cleftis, her stealth after she was like, yes, I know a way you can earn money, and then disappeared. But yeah, so they won over a grumpy halfling. The cleric flirted with the tiefling, flirted with the man of the cloth. Yeah, the barbarian had the halfling on her shoulders. And another thing that's interesting is that my barbarian, obviously intelligence is the dump stat for that, so she has a very low intelligence. But she was asking, because the player sort of, I guess, she DMs as well, with us. I guess because she just was switched on. She always asks the best questions, and I'm like, you're the character with the lowest intelligence. You should play a high intelligence character. Yeah. Also, my paladin has high charisma, but never really rolls any sort of deception or persuasion or intimidation checks or anything like that, because she sort of more sits back and assesses things, and I'm like, oh, charisma is wasted on you. But yeah, and then the tiefling's quite bossy and tiefling-like and very, what's the word? Outgoing. It's a word like that, but my brain can't get there. Bold. Brash. Those sorts of words. And then the rogue, obviously, just like my rogue is pretty, observes in a corner and then stabs afterwards. But anyway, yeah, so that was my first ever game that I ran, Wolves of Welton. Highly recommend, especially if you're a DM and you've heard this and you're like, oh, that's actually quite interesting. We have 3 maps, I think. We have a map of the area, which shows sort of where the caves are, where the town is, where the forest is, and where they first meet the people and the wolves on the road. Then we have the map of the edge of the forest and the wolf's cave, and then there's a more stand, sorry. Oh, only 2 maps, just those 2. They're just at different points in the document. That's the word. So yeah, site of wolf ambush, Welton, Wesley's farm, and a wolf den. So that's pretty good. Wesley's farm is where Featherrock the halfling was found after being the only one to survive in the search party. But yes, let me know if you want to hear about any of the other adventures I've run. If you want any tips on D&D or anything like that, I'm very passionate about it. It's become sort of my new obsession. And I love it. And I've run quite a few games. I've written a couple of them as well. Hoping to make them available for download. But need to write them up and type them up properly and make them awesome. But yeah, if you like the sound of Wolves of Welton, I will link the official website below, winghornpress.com. And yeah, I highly recommend running this adventure, as well as the Wild Sheep Chase. There's as well. Let me know if you want to hear any more. Thank you very much for tuning into this one. There were probably more hijinks and things that I've forgotten about, but I think it was about a year ago that I ran it and I don't have the notes. But yeah, I remember specifically my rogue turning into a bush to avoid a TPK, my paladin healing the owl bear after being deceived by it, my tiefling flirting like crazy with the with the priest, and the little grumpy halfling riding on the shoulders of my half-orc barbarian. So, anything's possible in D&D. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.